This week on The Gen Z Show,
we commemorate 80 years of the attacks on Pearl Harbor. A California high school football team makes a name for themselves, but they're not just your everyday football team. After years of devastation and loss, there is finally hope for Monarch Butterflies. And finally, several devastating tornadoes sweep through the United States of America, claiming hundreds of lives and demolishing everything in their path.
All of this and more coming up on The Gen Z Show.
I'm Clark.
And I'm Avi.
And we're your Gen Z hosts.
This is Gen Z's recap for the week of December 6th, 2021.
And we have a lot on the agenda for this week's show, so let's hop right into our first segment.
News and current events. The football team from the California School for the Deaf, located in Riverside, California, just made history with one of the most unforgettable seasons of all time. The team, whose players and coaches are all deaf, went undefeated during the regular season and climbed all the way to the Division II state champs.
Their opponents throughout the season, all hearing athletes, and yet they overcame the obstacles thrown at them and made history. It was the first time the team had ever had a winning record, and their story gained national attention over the last few weeks. Across the country and even the world, people were hearing about this team. From newspapers to television broadcasts, they were making their way into the spotlight.
Due to this unprecedented spike in attention and support, the championship game was moved from team's home field to a much larger stadium, which had a lot more room for their thousands of new fans. In the championship game, the California School for the Deaf Riverside team played a tough game against a Faith Baptist football team. And although they averaged over 65 points per game in the regular season, Faith Baptist was incredibly powerful and won the game 74-22.
Regardless of the score, the CSDR team had an incredible season, and their head coach Keith Adams told the press after the game that he was very proud of the team and that they had played a great season that fall. He was so happy that the team was able to finally put CDSR on the map and was incredibly proud of the numerous records that the team took home after the season.
A football game at CSDR isn't exactly your average football team, and there are some features that make their games unique. The national anthem isn't played, and there are no announcements on loudspeakers. Instead, the coaches and players use sign language to communicate with each other and game officials. The officials don't blow a whistle after a play or when a foul is called. Instead, they wave their hands and sign what is happening.
Unlike most hearing teams, CSDR does not huddle before plays, which led one of their opposing coaches to tell the New York Times that, quote, that they communicate better than any team I have ever coached against before, end quote. Unfortunately, despite the team's great success over the season, they were occasionally disrespected by opposing players and fans. A reporter for the New York Times stated that he noticed opposing fans mocking some of the players and the ways in which they communicated.
After the unfortunate loss in the championship game, CSDR player Christian Jimenez thanks his fans for believing in the team. He also asked people to acknowledge the team's incredible abilities, signing that, quote, "We hope you realize that we can play as deaf people. We can do anything but hear," end quote.
We hope our listeners can see how incredibly inspiring and heartwarming this news is. And from the two of us here at the Gen Z Show, go CSDR! We're rooting for you next year!
Now let's transition into some awesome news about Monarch Butterflies and their return from near devastation.
This year, butterfly enthusiasts from around the world cheered for the return of thousands of Western monarch butterflies to California. Recently, a study counted that there were significantly more monarchs this year than in the past 3 years, increasing hope for saving the species.
Monarch butterflies and all different species of butterflies migrate from colder states to warmer ones in the winter. California is often a hotspot for these butterflies around November, and they stay until their home warms up in mid to late spring. Each year, the annual arrival of butterflies is an exciting event for thousands of people around the globe, and a massive effort to count the butterflies is launched.
The count is run by the Xerces Society for Invertebrate Conservation, along with hundreds of volunteers and scientists. In the early and mid-1980s, counts of butterflies were in the several millions, but from the 1990s to 2017, that number started to decline rapidly, to hundreds of thousands rather than millions. In 2018 and 2019, the count dropped even lower, to just 30,000 butterflies. And in 2020, the count was under 2,000. This significant decrease in counts raised several concerns that loss of habitat and climate change were harming the butterflies and could drive them to extinction.
However, this year, the scientists and conservation agencies took a deep sigh to hear that over 100,000 monarch butterflies have already been counted, and there are more still coming. In locations where only a few hundred appeared in 2020, tens of thousands were spotted this year. One volunteer stated, quote, "It's kind of magical. All of a sudden, poof, you're just like a Disneyland fairy princess surrounded by butterflies," end quote.
The team of conservationists, scientists, and volunteers is eager to find more monarchs before the count ends. Researchers have yet to find the source of the substantial population growth, but good weather in their habitats was likely a key factor to the dramatic increase.
Scientists and conservationists will still have to work hard to protect the butterflies, but they are eager to see more population growth for years to come.
And now, let's transition into our last story for today, which, unfortunately, is not quite as heartwarming as the other two today.
This week, at least 30 tornadoes swept across 6 states: Arkansas, Illinois, Missouri, Mississippi, Tennessee, and most notably, Kentucky. The tornadoes claimed at least 100 lives and have destroyed potentially thousands of homes and buildings across the South and Midwest.
The tornadoes were unleashed by several storms on late Friday and early Saturday morning, collapsing buildings into twisted debris and claiming lives, with officials fearing the death toll could exceed 100. In Kentucky alone, the state's governor said that more than 70 people could have died after, quote, "one of the toughest nights in Kentucky history," end quote. CNN meteorologists claim that a 250-mile stretch of land between Arkansas and Kentucky was likely hit by just one massive tornado.
One of the most devastated sites is the southwestern Kentucky city of Mayfield, where a tornado hit the Mayfield Consumer Products candle factory Friday night while people were working. About 110 people were inside, and dozens are feared dead there, according to Kentucky's governor.
While no official number has been released for Kentucky yet, as the count remains to grow, 2 deaths have been reported in Arkansas, 4 in Tennessee, 6 in Illinois, and 2 in Missouri.
After the tragic events, Kentucky Governor Andy Beshear stated, quote, "I want to thank every local emergency management employee, police officer, firefighter, and first responder. This has been one of the toughest nights in Kentucky history. It's hard to put into words. Remember, each of the lost lives are children of God, irreplaceable to their families and communities. But we will make it through this. We will rebuild. We are strong, resilient people, and we are going to be there every step of the way. This is one state standing strong," end quote.
A state of emergency has been declared in Kentucky, and first responders continue to rescue survivors as we speak.
And that's all for this week's news and current events. Now, let's transition into our segment on anniversaries of historical events.
This week, we commemorate 80 years of the attack on Pearl Harbor, the event that changed the world forever. In 1941, many countries around the world were at war. World War II had begun in Europe in 1939 because Germany's leader, Adolf Hitler, wanted control over Europe. On the other side of the world, Japan was trying to forge an empire across Asia. Meanwhile, the United States was hoping to stay out of the war. But all of this changed on December 7th, 1941.
On that day, just before 8 a.m., the Japanese Army launched a surprise bomb attack on Pearl Harbor, a U.S. naval base located in Oahu, Hawaii. Pearl Harbor was home to many warships, several fleets of naval ships, and thousands of U.S. soldiers and their families.
At 7:55 a.m. on December 7th, 1941, the sky filled with Japanese planes that dropped bombs for over 90 minutes, destroying 4 ships and damaging 16 more. More than 2,400 lives were lost, and over 1,100 people were injured.
The following day, United States President Franklin D. Roosevelt called for a war on Japan, describing the attack as, quote, "a date which will live in infamy," end quote. Just days after the attacks, the United States joined the United Kingdom, Russia, and China to form the Allied Powers, which fought against Germany, Italy, and Japan. This
created a great sense of fear and hatred against the Japanese in the United States, and violence against Japanese Americans grew. 2 months after the original attacks, Over 120,000 Japanese Americans were forced out of their homes and sent to relocation centers, also known as internment camps. In 1988, an official apology was issued by the United States government, calling the internment camps, quote, a grave injustice, end quote.
Today, 80 years after the attacks on Pearl Harbor, we commemorate the tragic events of December 7, 1941. After 4 years of fighting, the United States and the Allied powers won the war, fighting for their brothers in arms who lost their lives on that day. Pearl Harbor remains an active military base to this day, as well as the Pearl Harbor National Memorial and the USS Arizona Memorial, named after one specific ship which was monumental in the attacks.
The memorial contains all of the names of the men who lost their lives on the Arizona, and over 500,000 gallons of oil still remain trapped underwater in the wreck, leaking slowly. The oil often floats to the surface around the wreckage, and has earned the name of the Black Tears of the Arizona. Less than 100 survivors of Pearl Harbor are still alive today, and every year on December 7th, they pay tribute to their fallen comrades, and people around the world gather to honor those who lost their lives in the attack.
Now, let's hop on over to some celebrity birthdays.
On December 6th, American actor, comedian, film director, screenwriter, and game show host Will Shriner turned 67.
Country singer Gary Morris turned 72 on December 7th.
Guitarist Phil Collen of Def Leppard turned 64 on December 8th.
Singer Donny Osmond turned 63 on December 9th.
Actor Tommy Kirk turned 79 on December 10th.
Singer Brenda Lee turned 76 on December 11th.
And game show host Bob Barker turned 97 on December 12th.
And now, everyone's favorite game show, Spot the Fake Story!
Welcome to Spot the Fake Story!
Everyone's favorite game show, where we list 3 stories and you have to guess which one isn't real. Write your answer in the comment section below and you might just win a prize.
And now, story number 1.
2021's Merriam-Webster Dictionary's Word of the Year is selected. This year's long-awaited Word of the Year is, drumroll please, vaccine. The number of times people looked up the word vaccine increased by more than 600% since 2020. It was a highly searched word for every day in 2021, according to Peter Sokolowski, Merriam-Webster's editor-at-large. The dictionary definition was also updated to include the technology used to create the COVID-19 vaccines.
Story number 2.
A gorilla in the Smithsonian National Zoo, located in Washington, D.C., United States, learned how to knit? Well, as it turns out, our closely related primates are possibly even smarter than we are. This gorilla learned to knit after just 3 months of training from one of his caretakers. It took a while, but 2 weeks after the learning, the gorilla actually managed to create a full red scarf with a little help from his main caretaker. The scarf is now for sale, with all profits going towards helping improve the gorilla's habitat.
And finally, story number 3.
A nonsense paper written by Iowa's autocomplete accepted for conference. And possibly the best story ever, Christopher Bartneck, associate professor at the University of Canterbury, an ultimate troll, submitted a paper to an international physics conference written by the iOS autocomplete function. He submitted it under a fake identity, aware that none of it made sense. Didn't matter though, still got accepted. Here are some winning lines from the abstract. Quote, nuclear weapons will not have to come out the same day after a long time of the year. Quote, the atoms of a better universe will have the right for the same as you are, the way we shall have to be a great place for a great time to enjoy the day you are a wonderful person. Quote, physics are great, but the way it does it makes you want a good book. Quote, power is not a great place for a good time, end quote.
And there you have it for Spot the Fake Story. Tell us in the comments down below what you think the fake story is. And we hope to see you next week on Spot the Fake Story.
Now, let's do some movie and book recommendations.
Read Willowdean, a fictional story of a little girl whose handmade creatures come to life.
Read The Iron Widow, the #1 New York Times bestseller science fantasy novel by Ziran J. Zhao.
Read Beasts of Prey, a 2021 young adult fantasy novel by American writer Anya Gray. The novel follows two teenagers, Kofi and Ekon, who enter the magical greater jungle in pursuit of a murderous creature called the Shantani.
Watch Back to the Outback, where a group of Australia's deadliest creatures plot a daring escape from their zoo.
Watch The Half of It, a movie where a shy, straight-A Chinese-American student helps the school jock woo a girl whom, secretly, they both desire.
Finally, watch The Ultimate Gift, where a deceased billionaire leaves his spoiled adult grandson a series of odd tasks to perform in order to receive the ultimate gift, with the resentful grandson having no idea what that might be.
And of course, to finish up the episode, let's talk about our picks for Gen Z Star of the Week. My pick for this week's Gen Z Star of the Week is Abby Weeks. She's an 18-year-old who founded the nonprofit organization Ecological Action, which aims at advocating for sustainability through education and political action. Her organization has convinced school officials in her home, just south of Denver, Colorado, to replace cafeteria styrofoam trays with reusable ones, and is working with town officials to place a fee on single-use plastic bags. Ecological Action has also helped to provide solar energy to the underprivileged, including a home for children orphaned by the AIDS epidemic in Uganda and a military veterans home on a Native American reservation in South Dakota.
And my pick is Alexa Grubel. At 10 years old, Alexa learned about the summer slide, the loss of information between school years during the summertime, intelligently noting that this would have a greater effect on low-income families who don't have the resources to keep their children educated during the vacation months. A recipient of the Dilertine Tikkun Olam Award, she founded Bags for Books, an organization dedicated to supplying the homeless shelters, schools, children's hospitals, and children from low-income families with books to prevent the summer slide. She has donated over 120,000 books and has helped many children with this organization. There you have it. That is our weekly recap for the week of December 6, 2021 by The Gen Z Show. Please be sure to subscribe to the podcast and like the episode if you enjoyed. Happy listening!